During a heated interview on Piers Morgan Uncensored, boxers Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn had to be physically separated by security as their long-standing rivalry exploded into a fiery confrontation. The tension had been building for months, fueled by their upcoming fight in April and past controversies, including Benn's failed drug test. However, the situation took an unexpected turn when the conversation shifted to an egg-throwing incident that took place during a press conference, where Benn's father, boxing legend Nigel Benn, stepped in to defend his son. As tempers flared, the two fighters squared up in the studio, forcing two large security guards to intervene before things got physical. The atmosphere was electric, with both men refusing to back down, setting the stage for one of the most intense boxing showdowns in recent history. The argument escalated even further when Piers Morgan brought up the moment from the press conference where Nigel Benn had placed his arm on Eubank Jr.'s throat in an attempt to defuse the situation. Morgan asked Eubank Jr. about his reaction to the incident, specifically his warning to Nigel Benn that if he ever did it again, there would be consequences. Eubank Jr. responded without hesitation, making it clear that his words were not an empty threat. "It wasn't a threat, it was a promise," he said, his tone icy and unwavering. His response only intensified the hostility in the room, as Conor Benn immediately took offense, seeing it as a direct challenge to his father. For Benn, this wasn't just about boxing, it was personal. Things took a nastier turn when Conor Benn furiously fired back, bringing up Eubank Jr.'s complicated relationship with his own father, Chris Eubank Sr. Benn accused his opponent of being bitter because his father had distanced himself, whereas Nigel Benn had always stood by his side. "You're just upset that your dad can't stand you, and my dad has my back," Benn taunted, his words cutting deep. The insult visibly rattled Eubank Jr. But he kept his composure, responding coldly, "Me and you are fighting. Whatever happens between us, happens. No one else can touch me because if they do, there'll be consequences." The tension in the room reached a boiling point as both fighters glared at each other, ready to explode at any moment. The situation spiraled completely out of control when Benn, now seething with rage, lunged toward Eubank Jr., challenging him to a fight on the spot. "You f-ked up talking about my dad? If I slap you right now, what are you going to do?" he shouted, his voice filled with fury. Security quickly stepped in, preventing a full-blown brawl from breaking out in the studio. But Benn wasn't done yet. Still fuming, he continued to challenge Eubank Jr., yelling, "Come on, we can have it outside, no problem." Yeah, we can. Think I'm mucking around, threatening my dad? You think I'm playing games? Don't ever talk to my dad like that. The raw emotion in his voice made it clear this was no longer just about a boxing match. This was personal warfare. With tensions running at an all-time high, it's clear that their April showdown will be more than just another fight. It will be a deeply personal battle between two men who have taken their rivalry to an entirely new level. The animosity between them has reached a point where it's not just about proving who is the better boxer, but about defending their families, their pride, and their legacies. As the dust settles from this explosive interview, one thing is certain: when Eubank Jr. and Benn finally step into the ring, it won't just be about titles or rankings, it will be about settling a score that has been years in the making. Fans around the world will be watching closely, eager to see how this bitter feud unfolds when fists finally replace words. As the confrontation unfolded, Piers Morgan struggled to regain control of the interview, but the hostility between the fighters was too intense to contain. Both men continued hurling insults at each other, refusing to de-escalate the situation. Morgan, clearly aware of how volatile things were becoming, attempted to shift the conversation back to their upcoming fight, but neither Eubank Jr. nor Benn was willing to let go of the personal attacks. Every remark seemed to add more fuel to the fire, making it clear that this rivalry had gone beyond the realm of professional boxing. For the audience, the raw aggression on display was both shocking and electrifying, giving fans a glimpse of the personal stakes involved in their highly anticipated bout. Despite the heated atmosphere, Eubank Jr. remained composed, but his words carried a sharp edge, making it evident that he was just as invested in the personal battle as Benn. He reiterated that his issue wasn't with Nigel Benn, but with Conor himself, stating that the fight was between them and no one else should get involved. His calm but firm stance seemed to agitate Benn even more, who saw it as an attempt to downplay the significance of his father's role in the feud. Benn's rage was unmistakable. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for his family's name and honor. His emotions were running high, and it was clear that this wasn't just a pre-fight stunt. He genuinely wanted to settle things with Eubank Jr. on the spot. The bitter history between the two families only added to the tension. Decades ago, their fathers, Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank, were part of one of boxing's most legendary rivalries. Their fights in the early 90s were brutal, personal, and unforgettable. Now, their sons were carrying on that same legacy, but with even more resentment brewing between them. Unlike their fathers, who eventually found mutual respect, Eubank Jr. and Benn seemed to have no interest in reconciliation. Instead, their feud had escalated to a level where both men were willing to risk everything just to prove a point. The deep-rooted animosity between them ensured that their upcoming fight would be far more than just another bout. It would be a continuation of a decades-old war. As security kept the fighters apart, it became clear that the tension wasn't going to die down anytime soon. Benn, still visibly furious, kept pacing back and forth, shaking his head in frustration. Eubank Jr., on the other hand, maintained his cool, smirking as if he had gotten exactly the reaction he wanted. The psychological warfare between them was evident. Benn was fueled by raw emotion, while Eubank Jr. was playing the mind games, trying to get under his rival's skin. This dynamic made their fight all the more intriguing, as it raised the question of whether Benn's passion would overpower Eubank Jr.'s calculated approach, or if Eubank Jr.'s mental composure would give him the upper hand when they finally met in the ring. With the interview ending in chaos, the anticipation for their April clash has reached an all-time high. Fans are now more eager than ever to see how this rivalry unfolds inside the ring. Will Benn's fury drive him to victory, or will Eubank Jr.'s experience and mind games lead him to triumph? One thing is certain: the bad blood between these two fighters is real, and when the bell rings, neither will be holding anything back. This isn't just a fight for titles or rankings, this is a fight for respect, legacy, and personal redemption. As the world watches, waiting for the final showdown, one question remains: who will have the last laugh when it's all said and done?